In this video, I will be discussing the sponsorship program to immigrate to Canada. To become a sponsor, you must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident and meet certain eligibility requirements that we're going to discuss in the next slide. To become a sponsor, you should be at least 18 years old. You should be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident. You should be able to provide for the basic needs of any person you want to sponsor in future. You have to prove that you're not receiving any social assistance for a reason other than a disability. You have to be careful. The government of Canada allows Canadian citizens outside of the country, the ones that are residing outside of the Canada, to be able to sponsor their loved ones. But the same rule does not apply to the permanent residents. Spousal sponsorship to Canada is a way for you to bring your spouse or common law partner to Canada as a permanent resident. The commitment to spousal sponsorship involves a commitment to support your spouse for 3 years after their arrival in Canada. During this time, the sponsored spouse must not receive social assistance for reasons other than disability. Both spouses must also sign a sponsorship agreement that outline their obligation to each other. Common law partners are eligible for spousal sponsorship if they have lived together in a conjugal relationship for at least 12 continuous months. This requirement can be met in Canada or abroad. Sponsorship of a common law partner is subject to the same eligibility criteria and commitment terms as a sponsorship of a spouse. Conjugal partners are eligible for spousal sponsorship if they have been in a committed relationship for at least 1 year but have been unable to live together continuously due to reasons beyond their control, such as immigration barriers, sexual orientation, or legal restriction in their home country. You need to give proof that you could not live together or get married in your conjugal partner's country. For example, proof of refused long-term stays in each other's country. In Canada, a citizen or permanent resident can support their kids who are under 22 years old and they are single. To be able to sponsor a dependent child, the sponsor must be able to take care of their expenses and other family members they are responsible for. Once they become a permanent resident, they can access social services like education and healthcare. You'll have to promise to financially support your child for 10 years or until they turn 25. If you're sponsoring just your child, you'll name them as the main applicant and show that the other parent or legal guardian agrees to their immigration. If you are sponsoring your spouse or partner and their child, you'll name your spouse or partner as the main applicant and the child as a dependent. Are you a grandparent longing to reunite with your loved ones in Canada? The good news is that there may be a way to make that happen through family sponsorship. Sponsoring your parent or grandparent to come to Canada as a permanent resident is a possibility, but it's important to understand some key features of the process. Limited spots. The government sets a cap on the number of sponsorship applications, but they accept each year, which means that the process can be very competitive. It's important to stay up to date on the application opening dates and deadlines to be able to submit your interest to sponsor form. Lengthy process. The process of sponsoring a parent or grandparent can take several years or more, and you'll need to be patient. There are several steps in the process, including submitting an interest to sponsor form, receiving an invitation to apply, and submitting a full application. The next is financial responsibilities. As a sponsor, you'll need to sign an undertaking, which is a legal agreement to financially support your parents or grandparents for 20 years from the date they become permanent residents in Canada. If you have a blood-related or adopted brother, sister, nephew, niece, or a grandchild who is under 18 years old, single, and both parents have passed away, you might be able to sponsor them. However, you cannot sponsor them if one parent is still alive, the parents have disappeared, abandoned the relative, or are in jail. Canada allows you to sponsor a person with no limitation of a relationship or an age if you are lonely in Canada. To sponsor a relative, you must not have any other living relatives to sponsor, such as a spouse, common law, conjugal partner, son, daughter, parent, grandparent, etc. Additionally, you must not have any relatives who are Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or registered Indian under the Indian Act. If the relative being sponsored has a spouse, partner, or dependent children, they must be included on the same sponsorship application. You should be aware that there are several situations that make you ineligible for sponsorship. For example, if you have convicted of a violent crime, or if you are under a default. For example, you have a loan that hasn't been paid to a bank, or you didn't pay court for child support, or you have declared bankruptcy which hasn't been discharged yet. Don't miss out on our Canadian immigration content and updates. Subscribe to our page today.